In the quiet village of Umuaka, nestled between rolling hills and thick forest, a strange event was unfolding in the home of the Okafors. Their 10-year-old daughter, Amoka, had always been special, lively, intelligent, and full of curiosity. But no one could have predicted what was about to happen to her. One morning, as Amoka's mother, Mama Chinye, combed her daughter's hair, she noticed something odd. The hair seemed longer than it was the day before. At first, she brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just her imagination. But as the days passed, Amoka's hair didn't just grow, it kept growing at an alarming rate. By the end of the week, her once shoulder-length hair had reached her waist. By the second week, it trailed behind her like a flowing river of black silk. It never stopped growing, not even when it was cut. No matter how many times Mama Chinya or the village women trimmed it, by morning, it had grown back even longer than before. People in the village began whispering. Some said it was a blessing from the gods. Others believed it was a curse. The elders gathered to discuss, while the local herbalist, Papa Okon, was called to examine her. He ran his fingers through the thick strands, muttering ancient words under his breath. Then, suddenly, his eyes widened in fear. "This is not ordinary," he whispered. This is something beyond our understanding." But before he could explain further, something even stranger happened. That night, as Amoka lay in bed, her hair began to move on its own. That night, as Amoka lay in bed, her mother sat beside her, gently stroking her hair. It was so long now that it spilled over the edge of the bed and pulled onto the floor. Mama Chinya sighed heavily. She had tried everything, cutting it, burning the strands, even tying it up tightly, but by morning, it always grew back longer and fuller. The candlelight flickered as a sudden breeze swept through the room. The air felt heavy, almost unnatural. Mama Chinya stood up to close the window, but just as she turned around, she saw something that made her heart stop. Amoka's hair was moving. At first, it was subtle, like a slight ripple in a pond. Then, it slithered like a living thing, curling around her arms, wrapping around her fingers. Mama Chinya gasped and reached for her daughter, but just as she did, Amoka's eyes flew open. "Mama," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I had a dream." "What dream, my child?" her mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw a woman, she had hair just like mine. Long, black, and never-ending. She called me by my name. She said she was waiting for me." A deep chill settled in the room. Mama Chinya's hands shook as she held Amoka close. Who was the woman in her dream? Why was she waiting? The next morning, news of what had happened spread through the village. The elders met once again, and this time, they made a decision. Amoka must be taken to the oldest seer in the land, the one who knew the ancient secrets of their ancestors. So, just before sunset, Amoka, her parents, and a few trusted villagers began the long journey to the hidden cave of Madam Ebo, the last living seer. As they approached the cave, the wind howled through the trees, and Amoka's hair began to rise on its own, as if sensing something ahead. And then, from the darkness of the cave, a voice echoed, "I have been expecting you." The cave entrance loomed before them, shrouded in mist. The villagers who had come along hesitated, murmuring prayers under their breath. Only Amoka, her parents, and the village chief, Elder Dyke, dared to step forward. Inside, the cave was vast and eerily silent, except for the occasional drop of water echoing in the darkness. Amoka's hair, which had now grown long enough to trail behind her like a dark river, shifted on its own, as though it could sense what lay ahead. And then, from the shadows, she appeared. Madam Ebo. She was an ancient woman, her face lined with deep wrinkles, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Her own hair was long, unnaturally long, coiling around her like a nest of black serpents. But unlike Amokas, it did not move on its own. Instead, it listened. "I have been expecting you," she said again, her voice deep and knowing. "The child with the cursed blessing." Mama Chinyere gasped. "Cursed blessing? What does that mean?" Madam Ebo did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached out her frail hand and touched Amoka's hair. The moment she did, Amoka felt a sharp jolt, like lightning shooting through her veins. She gasped, her vision blurring. The cave around her disappeared, and suddenly, she was somewhere else. A different time. A different world. She stood in a massive palace, its golden pillars stretching to the sky. Before her, sitting on a throne, was the woman from her dream. Her hair was even longer now, cascading in endless waves across the floor, through the palace halls, out into the distance. It shimmered, glowing like moonlight, and it whispered. "Amoka," the woman spoke, her voice layered, as if many voices spoke at once. "You do not know who you are, do you?" Amoka tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. "You are the last of our kind," the woman continued. "The last daughter of the forgotten line. And now, it is time to awaken." Suddenly, a piercing pain shot through Amoka's scalp. She screamed, clutching her head as her hair began to rise, higher, wilder, moving like a living creature, like a storm brewing around her. The vision shattered. Amoka collapsed in the cave, gasping for breath. Madam Ebo watched her carefully, her eyes unreadable. "What did you see, child?" she asked. Amoka's voice trembled as she whispered, "She said I am the last of the forgotten line." At those words, Madam Ebo's expression darkened. The cave seemed to grow colder. "The forgotten line," Elder Dyke murmured, his face pale. "Then that means..." "It means," Madam Ebo interrupted, "that Amoka's hair is not just growing. It is awakening." A heavy silence fell. And then, in the distance, the wind howled again. But this time, it carried a voice. "She is ours." A gentle hush fell over the cave. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows on the walls as everyone absorbed Madam Ebo's words. Mama Chinyere clutched her daughter's hand tightly. "Please," she pleaded, her voice soft but firm. "She is just a child. What does all this mean?" Madam Ebo sighed, her gaze fixed on Amoka's long, flowing hair. "The forgotten line," she said slowly, "were women gifted with hair that held great power. They were once the keepers of wisdom, the guardians of peace. But long ago, their presence faded from the world until now." Amoka's eyes widened. "So, my hair is like theirs?" Madam Ebo nodded. "Yes, child. But yours is even more special. It is growing because it is searching. It is seeking something only you can find." Elder Dyke, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Is this a blessing or a burden?" Madam Ebo smiled faintly. "That depends on how it is used." She turned to Amoka. "Your hair is connected to the wisdom of those before you. It remembers what was forgotten. It listens to the world in ways we cannot. And now, it has chosen you." Amoka looked down at her hair, running her fingers through its thick strands. It was soft, warm, and somehow, comforting. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of it. She felt curious. "What must she do?" Mama Chinyere asked. Madam Ebo reached into a small wooden box beside her and pulled out an ornate comb carved from ivory, decorated with delicate symbols. She handed it to Amoka. "This was made by the last women of the forgotten line," she explained. "It carries their wisdom. Each time you comb your hair with it, you will understand more. You will hear their voices, not to frighten you, but to guide you." Amoka took the comb carefully. It felt smooth and light in her hands, yet powerful. "Use it when you seek answers," Madame Ebo continued. Your hair will grow as long as it needs to, but with this, you will learn how to control its gift. Relief washed over Mama Chinya's face. So she will be safe? Madame Ebo smiled warmly. She is not in danger. She is simply awakening to who she was always meant to be. Amoka felt a new sense of excitement. She wasn't cursed. She wasn't strange. She was special. And now, she had the chance to uncover the secrets of the past and shape her future. As they left the cave, the night air felt peaceful. The wind no longer howled, it whispered. And as Amoka held the comb tightly in her hands, she knew one thing for certain. As Amoka and her family walked back to the village, a strange sense of peace settled over them. The weight of fear had lifted, replaced by curiosity and purpose. Amoka held the ancient comb tightly in her hands, its smooth surface warm against her fingers. That night, as she sat before the small mirror in her room, she slowly ran the comb through her long, flowing hair. The moment the teeth of the comb touched her scalp, a soft hum filled the air, a whisper, gentle and kind. Amoka. She gasped but did not let go. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. The voice was soothing, familiar, like a grandmother telling a bedtime story. You are one of us. Your hair is not a burden. It is a gift. With it, you will bring wisdom, healing, and joy. Trust it. It will never lead you astray. Tears welled in Amoka's eyes, not from sadness, but from understanding. For so long, she had wondered why she was different. Now, she finally knew. She opened her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was beautiful, thick, and full of life. It no longer felt overwhelming. It felt like a part of her, a part of something greater. From that day on, Amoka embraced her gift. Her hair still grew, but now, she understood it. When she combed it, she felt connected to the wisdom of the past. When she listened, it guided her to help others. In time, she became known across the villages as the girl with the wise hair. People came to her for advice, for comfort, and for healing. And she grew, not just in age, but in purpose. Her story was no longer about a girl whose hair refused to stop growing. It was about a girl who discovered her gift and used it to change the world. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.